In India today, the Arab conquests of the 7th to the 8th century CE are confidently proclaimed as proof of Islam's iconoclastic savagery. These, along with the later careers of Mahmud Ghazni and Muhammad Ghori, are generally believed to have completely destroyed the older cultures and religions that they came into contact with. But the medieval world isn't that simple, especially once we look beyond political and religious invective. In fact, for a few decades in the 8th century, as the Abbasid Caliphate was being consolidated, a dynasty of former Buddhists from Balkh in present-day Afghanistan ranked among the most powerful in the empire. Through their illustrious careers, they helped establish the Caliphate for centuries thereafter and commissioned Sanskrit translations that spread from Kashmir to Spain. Their careers help us better understand the nature of medieval conquest and how we should think about it today. I'm Anirudh Kanisetti, historian and author of Lords of the Deccan. Welcome to Thinking Medieval, where every week we tell you something new about our complex, innovative past. Always feel free to check out our research and citations below, and remember that we're all figuring out how to think about our messy, bloody, dazzling history. Just like the term India, the term Iran generally evokes the monolithic modern nation-state. But ancient India and ancient Iran were both sprawling, diverse land masses home to many language groups, many religions, many cultures. In his excellent chapter, The Bactrian Background of the Barmakids, historian Kevin Van Bladel brings this point across by examining the eastern portion of the Iranian world, known to us as Bactria. We visited Bactria before in Thinking Medieval, though not in the detail that it deserves. Defined by the valley of the upper Amudarya river encircled by mountains, Bactria, also known as Tukharistan, was the most important crossroads in Central Asia, with connections into India, China and Iran. Balkh, at its southern extremity, was its premier city. Bactria had a distinctive political and religious culture of its own, and its people spoke Bactrian and Iranian language. It was once the seat of the greco-bactrian kingdom and one of the major centers of the Kushan Empire in the 1st to 3rd century CE. More about them here. Buddhism flourished under Kushan power, and networks of monasteries and stupas spread along the overland routes to China. Balkh itself hosted a colossal stupa and monastery called the Navavihara, the new monastery adorned with gems and silk. Intriguingly, as suggested by anthropologist Mostafa Vaziri in Buddhism in Iran, an anthropological approach to traces and influences, some of these networks may have extended west. Many villages in present-day Iran bear the name of Naubahar, derived from Navavihara, as well as Buddhan, Buddhian, and so on. It's not clear when this transmission could have happened. In the 3rd century at least, the Zoroastrian high priesthood of Iran's Sasanian Empire was fairly inimical to Buddhism. Though the Sasanians eventually seized Bactria from the Kushans, it remained a frontier region, and Buddhism continued to thrive under subsequent waves of Hunnic and Turkic rulers. From the 7th century onwards, the Sasanians were conquered by the Arabs in western Iran. By the 8th century, Arab armies had reached Bactria. The ensuing political chaos was advantageous to other powers, such as the Kashmiri king Lalit Aditya Muktapida, more in this video here, who forced local rulers to pay him tribute. The king of Balkh fled as the Arabs moved in. Professor Van Bladel, analyzing Bactrian documents, found that even though Arabs were present, most locals remained Buddhist and swore allegiance to local gods. Some of them converted to Islam and adopted Arabized names, but there's no indication in Bactrian documents that they were doing it at sword point. Bactria had seen many conquerors come and go. It was by no means inevitable that the Arabs would stay. The Navavihara at Balkh was an enormous establishment, drawing patronage from local rulers as well as from the more distant Kabul Shahs, more in this video here. Its chief officials bore the Sanskrit title of Pramukha, Arabized to Barmak. The Barmaks were not monks, they were aristocrats and intermarried with important families. As the region's political fabric frayed during the wars of the 8th century, the Navavihara's wealth made it a target. A petty Buddhist king massacred the Barmaks family, and one of his sons escaped to Kashmir. Here, the Karkota dynasty, flush with the wealth of conquest, patronized Buddhism while keeping it subordinate to Vaishnavism. Bactrians and Turks were part of the Karkota court, and as Van Bladel writes, the young Barmak studied medicine there before returning to the Navavihara. With the Muslim name of Khalid, he joined the Caliph's court as a healer, and an Arab garrison was then established in Balkh. Meanwhile, transformations were afoot in the Arab world. The vast Iranian plateau resented the supremacy of Arabs. Supported by an influential preacher from the region, a new dynasty, the Abbasids, spread to power in the Caliphate. They would need a more cosmopolitan elite to rule their unwieldy empire. They needed men like Khalid, the Barmak. In the space of decades, the Barmak family was catapulted to the highest ranks of Caliphate nobility. According to the Encyclopedia Iranica, as governors and generals, they put down rebellions and oversaw Abbasid campaigns against the Byzantine Empire. Barmakid men tutored the Caliph's sons. Barmakid women were their wet nurses. The Barmakids even commissioned a history of their family, the Akhbar al-Baramika wa Fadailuhum. Through this, they claimed that the Navihara had been built on the model of the Kaaba in Mecca, and that the name Barmak actually meant in charge of Mecca, Abar Makkah. As Van Bladel writes, through this the Barmakids legitimized their previous careers as powerful Buddhists, justified their ownership of vast tracts of land around Balkh, and established themselves as the eastern equals to the western Quraysh tribe, the custodians of Mecca to whom the Abbasid caliphs themselves were related. The reinvention worked. The Barmakids were tremendously wealthy and powerful and maintained an active interest in their Bactrian heritage and its connections to the Sanskritic world of Kashmir and beyond. Yahya ibn Khalid, the vizier of the entire caliphate, sent missions to India to collect texts and materials and commission translations of medical texts. He was the patron of a number of Indian scholars who were also well trained in Sanskrit literary theory. Many other scholars at Baghdad interacted with them, and fragments of translated text traveled as far as Spain. Even Chanakya, rendered into Arabic as Shanak the Great Indian, was translated for his expertise on poisons. The Barmakids' success was also their downfall. By 803, concerned about their overweening influence, Caliph Harun al-Rashid turned against the family and stripped them of their properties. Some Arab poets claimed that this was because of the Barmakids' interest in polytheism. Others said it was because of an attempt to marry an Abbasid princess. We have no way of knowing what actually happened. At the very least, we can say that the poets and historians who attacked the Barmakids after their downfall had a job to do, just like the poets and historians they once patronized. And the end of the Barmakids did not mean the end of non-Muslims and non-Arabs in the halls of Caliphate power. As Van Bladel writes, Greco-Roman scientific ideas had been popular before the Barmakids and grew even more popular thereafter. And though the Eastern Iranian elite was no longer as prominent, Christians and Jews from Syria remained influential bureaucrats and doctors. Within a century, Western Iranian warlords then assumed control of the Caliphate. But more broadly, what does this say about the interaction of Islam and Buddhism? Did the rise of the Barmakids indicate religious tolerance, and did their fall indicate intolerance? I'd like to suggest that these categories don't do justice to the complex power negotiations of the 8th century, the countless personal and public decisions that left little trace in the public record. Intransigent religious categories don't fit the nuance of the Bactrian documents, which show a gradual adoption of Arab ideas. Rather than talking of Muslims and Buddhists, maybe we should talk about Arabs and Bactrians, the interactions of complex groups rather than monoliths. Blobs of color on maps don't capture the reality of medieval empires. Then, as now, empires were made of people, some more powerful than others. If you have questions or comments, we'd love to hear them. Follow us everywhere on social media. You can find me on Instagram at Anirudh and at Connected Histories, and on Twitter at Kanisetti. We'll see you next week.